What if I told you that humanity is not alone in the universe, and the people who know the truth were never elected, never held accountable, and never planned to tell you? If a truth is too big, too disruptive, or too powerful, does the public still deserve to know about it? Does secrecy become its own form of danger? Imagine discovering something that could rewrite physics, history, religion, and national security, and being told that you're not allowed to know, even when it's your job. Crash retrievals, hidden programs, classified tech, and a structure of secrecy older than the CIA itself. Today I'm breaking it down. So I recently watched the documentary The Age of Disclosure. This is a documentary that originally premiered at South by Southwest this year, and people were just really baffled by it. It took a while to get it to a streaming service. I was a little worried that it wasn't going to end up on a streaming service, but I'm glad it did, and I'm glad I saw it. I have four kind of major overarching takeaways from this documentary. So I want to preface this by giving just a little bit of backstory. Um, you know, Back in the day, a lot of people, maybe people that you would think of as conspiracy theorists used to always talk about this incident in Roswell, New Mexico in the 40s where there was a UFO crash and the government ended up getting a craft and maybe even some bodies out of that. And they've been experimenting on this stuff ever since. More recently, things like that seem like they may be more and more believable. The government did actually look into many, many sightings of unidentified flying objects back in the 40s and the 50s, and they called it Project Blue Book. You can look it up. There are released documents on it, and they came to the conclusion that certainly many unidentified flying objects were things that were explainable, things that they could explain away and say, okay, this was probably that. This was probably a satellite, whatever. This was probably a weather balloon. But there were a certain percentage of those sightings that the government could not explain. They were truly anomalous, and the witnesses were very credible. And there were press conferences going back to that time of Air Force officials stating just that. That they basically didn't have an explanation for all of these crafts. So they never really denied that there was something else out there that did not seem easily explainable. That being said, Project Blue Book shut down in, I believe, the 80s, officially. And the government has professed since that day that they never looked into it, that nothing ever came of it, that it was just, we don't know, and there was nothing to see here, so to speak. And over the years, many unofficial whistleblowers, if you will, because frankly, there was no whistleblower process for people like this up until very, very recently, like in the last 4 or 5 years. There was no real whistleblower process for people to come forward. So there were a lot of unofficial whistleblowers who spoke about their time in the US government, and some of them were involved in a project or they saw something and the government told them not to talk about it, or they signed a non-disclosure agreement in a military, in a compartmentalized program of some kind. A lot of people don't believe those people because, understandably, you know, how do you verify who they are and what they did? And even when you can verify that, some of the things that these people would say seemed really crazy. That perhaps our government was very much experimenting on this type of technology, and that that beings from other places, yes, do exist, and most of that gets swept under the rug, right? Fast forward to 2017. The New York Times published an article talking about a program that the government, that the Pentagon very much did have, and it was very real. And this guy, Lou Elizondo, was a highly decorated special ops guy, came up through the military ranks and worked his way into military intelligence working for the government. He left his job in protest because his job was to investigate this topic, and he became aware that there was a program that he was not being read into, even though he had the clearances to have access to that sort of thing. He had, you know, what on paper is considered the top of security clearances. But he was not given access to those things. And other people, David Grush being one of them, he's somebody who has, you probably heard me talk about before if you've ever seen a video of mine. He testified before Congress stating that he interviewed over 40 witnesses who are just like him, very high up on the food chain in military intelligence. There was a lot of testimony, same story, that there was a program, at least one program or a parent program, unelected officials in military and in government who oversaw this project, and it did not run under the normal oversight channels with Congress. For those who don't know, our government has secret projects, and a lot of them are what they call knowledge seeker projects that people who have certain clearances in Congress and in the executive branch, they are made aware of these things. They also have unacknowledged ones that they are running, but they don't acknowledge exist. A lot of times this is for national security reasons. We don't want our adversaries to know certain things about what we're doing, of course. And the more people you tell about that, the more obviously difficult it makes to keep that sort of thing quiet. So there are a group of usually 8 people, they call it the Gang of 8 in Congress, who can hear, are allowed to be given a nuts and bolts, very simple explanation at least of what certain unacknowledged programs exist. What has come out through this process of Lou Elizondo leaving his job in protest, going public with the New York Times, saying that he was part of this program that studied the topic and that there's a lot to learn about it and that there needs to be more transparency. Same thing, David Grush, same problem, seeking transparency, cannot get it, realizes that there is a serious problem in that there's a whole entire program or programs, like a branch of programs, running outside of oversight of Congress and using misappropriated funds from Congress and a bunch of other accusations. Number one, humanity is not alone. Our government and others know this, but only certain unelected officials in the U.S. government are allowed to be in the loop. This is understanding the structure of secrecy and secret information wars. So Lou Elizondo comes forward. He uses this momentum he's getting from this New York Times article and makes some contacts with the late Harry Reid, a senator in Congress who really is the person to thank for pushing this topic forward more modernly, more recently. And he does start to get they do start to get the attention of several Congress people, Kristen Gillibrand, Chuck Schumer, Senator Rubio. The House Oversight Intelligence Committee has run several meetings on this. What's funny about this topic is that, as weird and wacky as it sounds and as it seems, the more and more people who are in Congress who take part in these briefings that have happened and all that, they decide, oh wow, there's something to this. So that number is growing of politicians who are becoming interested in actually taking action on this. That being said, it's tricky because some of them have the clearances that they should know about this, but they don't. And so when they're confronted with it, many of them are dismissive of the fact that it may exist because they're like, well, I should know about that. Well, yeah, you should. And that's part of the whole problem. And many who are open to it are a little unsure of what to think about the topic because, it's hard without really, really, really clear proof to feel good about something, especially something as polarizing as something that people may not take you seriously is the problem. If you kind of glob on to this, people think that you need to show up at family dinner wearing a tinfoil hat. And I get that that's kind of the way our society works right now, that's the view that people have of this topic, is that it's not to be taken seriously, but it's not going to be that way moving forward. There's also a lot of unknowns. Are these crafts from an adversary? Are they a classified program that's running outside of oversight, which there's evidence to suggest that is also true? Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, some sort of crypto terrestrial. Where are these beings? Where are these things coming from? And then there's the simple explanation that it might be some combination of all. And I think I'm on that team. I don't think it's as simple as they're craft from another planet. I don't think it's as simple as they might be one of our adversaries experimenting with this technology. I don't think it's as simple as it's the technology that we're experimenting with. I do think it's probably more than one of those things, which unfortunately makes this topic even more complicated. So one might ask, how is it that a program like this, if it exists, how does it function? How did it work? Well, first of all, you should know that the Pentagon has pretty much never passed an audit, and they've been missing trillions of dollars for quite some time. The estimates of people in this documentary talking about this program, they estimate that at least $1 trillion has been spent on this. And that the secrecy level of this program is more than the atomic bomb. So let's talk about the structure of secrecy, how this actually works. The folks in this documentary, they allege that the CIA is like the headquarters. They are at the very top of it. The deputy director of science and tech is alleged to be kind of the quarterback. They run the crash retrieval portfolio, meaning whatever is taken, they have the catalog. They probably decide where it gets distributed. Then you have over here the Air Force. This is special ops people. These are the ones who are actually ready to go on a moment's notice if there's a crash, if they gun one down, which is something that we are debated to be doing right now, FYI, on purpose, getting UAP craft to show up somewhere and downing them with like a directed energy weapon or certain other things. I don't know. So the Air Force, usually special ops. Apparently they also use some special ops from different branches of military, but it's mostly the Air Force folks. So they're on the ones out there doing field ops. They're the ones actually doing the crash retrievals. Then you have, where does the material go? Bing, 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 to the contractors. You're talking Northrop Grumman. You're talking Raytheon. You're talking Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works especially. So those are the major three. A lot of them kind of ate some of the smaller contractors over the years, and those are the big three. There are others, some major players here, definitely like top three, but probably like 5 to 7 major players. Okay, but how does this all stay secret, one might ask? Well, that's where the Department of Energy comes in. A lot of people don't know that a lot of our secret programs are actually listed under the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is in charge of anything that has to do with atomic energy, nuclear, radiation, anything like that. And we'll get to the radiation thing later because it does apply to this conversation. The Department of Energy classifies certain types of energy and research and weapons applications, certain programs in the DOE having to do with weapons, technology, research, they all get classified separate and apart from the normal classification projects under the Atomic Energy Act. They all get classified separately, above and beyond what is normal classification. And that is because of some language in the Atomic Energy Act from back in the day. So that's why there's no disclosure of this. It is just as secret as our experiments back in the 40s on the atomic bomb, if not more. This is the golden nugget, if you will. So, giving that context, you might start to understand how we've gotten ourselves in this conundrum. So why do we have such secrecy? The folks in this documentary, at least one of them, did mention that the incident at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, I believe it was, it did happen. And there was a craft that was recovered as well as bodies. And they were taken ultimately to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This incident happened at a time where we were fresh out of World War II. We were really starting to compete with Russia. And we had other adversaries out there that whoever was in charge at the time was probably actually terrified that they'd found this technology. They didn't know if one of our adversaries had maybe discovered something like this and had been working on it. We were in no position to share it with the world and go forth not knowing what our future was with atomic energy or whatever this energy represented. So when you go back in time and understand the context, you can understand how this became so secret to begin with. But that's not where we are today. Today, we actually risk the same problems, but in a different way. Meaning, our progress on these programs, people who are whistleblowers from these programs, they often say that they're concerned about being stifled because they can't share information. We can't bring in outside scientists who might even be better at this than I am to figure it out. Because all of those people need to pass like a top secret security clearance thing. We are in a Cold War race with our adversaries. The folks in this documentary who are definitely in the know, they know that at least China and Russia are experimenting on this technology, and a lot of them are very worried that our adversaries might be as far along as we are, give or take. So, that being said, it puts all three of these potential parties in a stalemate because none of them is going to want to unveil this technology unless they absolutely have to like stop nuclear war or something like that. Because uh, once you show your cards, then the gig is up. Your enemies are going to know exactly where you're at with this reverse engineering program. So folks high up in the military and intelligence and in Congress, they are very concerned about the lack of transparency because us closing off this technology and this information from the public not only could cause panic if people find out all these things all at once with no warning, that could definitely be catastrophic, and we'll get into that a little bit. But we don't want to end up in a war with these things because it could be highly, highly destructive, just on a level that makes nukes look like child's play. Number two, what are the characteristics of a UAP? One, instantaneous acceleration. It's not going from like 0 to 100 gradually. It's going from 0 to thousands of miles per hour without needing to accelerate. It's just instantaneous. Two, hypersonic velocity. Our best jets, I think, go around 4,600 miles an hour, which would basically peel one of us apart. Humans turn to jello at some point. Okay, G forces are real, at least in the sense that the way we operate a jet. UAP, by contrast, they have been captured going 40,000 miles an hour and up. Third characteristic, transmedium travel. That means going from space to air to under the ocean. They're also able to change direction in a way that we wouldn't be able to do. When our jets have to make a big turn, it can take them like half a state to make that turn sometimes because they're going so fast that if they try to make a tight turn, the pilot inside would basically turn to jello or would pass out. That's not the case with the UAP. They can be going thousands of miles an hour and change direction or stop on a dime. And if they have occupants, either something's happening to protect them or they don't feel the effects somehow, or they're highly resilient. Fourth characteristic, low observability. This means no exhaust, no sonic boom, even though these objects appear to be going faster than the speed of sound, clearly. Very hard to detect on radar. And an interesting one, since these objects have been observed flying into water at extremely high speeds, there's virtually no splash or wake. They just seem to go right in. And everybody's like watching on the monitor saying, what the hell just happened? And lastly, fifth, biological effects. There have been military personnel, there have been people with like abductee type stories or contact stories. Many of them who get close to a craft, maybe at a bad time, often have a biological effect. Scarring and burns, they appear to be like radiation burns, basically. And like they could have been received from like an energy discharge, whether accidental or intentional, something, from the craft kind of zaps them and really messes them up, burns them, like can give them internal scarring as well. And by the way, there's many different types of craft that have been observed. Some really huge, like the size of football fields. Some really small, like the size of a soccer ball or a softball, kind of like Orby type, something that glows and moves all around. Some pyramid shapes, some your classic like saucer type shape, and of course a tic tac shape has been very commonly seen as well. Third takeaway, interesting encounters and insider information. For someone who studied this topic a lot, most of the things in this documentary were not necessarily news to me, but I did find a few things very interesting. Eric Davis, who is a physicist and was one of the lead scientists on the UAP task force and ATIP, I think, George Bush Sr. told him that. If you know any UFO lore, often it is thought that someone near the head of the CIA was probably one of the people that was in charge of this program. The head of the CIA has often been rumored to be one of the positions that is read into this program. George Bush Sr. told Eric Davis that when he became CIA director back in the day, he was not read into the program. He only found out years later about it. And the person who told him about it also told him about crash retrievals in the 40s and an incident where a craft landed at Holloman Air Force Base. Non-human intelligence, like beings, tall, they were described as tall, slender, humanoid beings, came out of this craft and spoke to uniformed Air Force personnel and some CIA representatives. George Bush Sr. tried to ask more about this, and he was told, quote, "You don't have a need to know." And that quote is very interesting because that is the same line that many people in the past in the government who have tried to inquire about this, who found out that there was definitely something going on, tried to inquire, and they were told, yes, we know who you are. Yes, we know you have clearance, but you do not have a need to know. And click, hung up, basically. I believe Bill Clinton's chief of staff was one of those people, actually. I know, I'm going to find it. I'll post a link to it. It's either a CIA or an FBI declassified document of somebody's chief of staff or something like that writing. I can't remember who he was writing. It was an internal memo, but he was basically ranting about how pissed he was that he had been told to basically fuck off when when he tried to inquire about this, and he was really mad. There's definitely like some there on that weird statement of like you don't have a need to know. That's come up like a dozen plus times, no joke. The second revelation I thought was interesting. Lou Elizondo claimed, I don't know if he was the only one, but he was one of the ones that claimed that the Vatican has irrefutable evidence of non-human intelligence. They're very much aware internally, but they don't speak publicly about it. And the last tidbit, Roswell did happen. That was reiterated in this documentary. Like the lore kind of goes, craft and bodies were recovered. The timeline of all this is very interesting because shortly after that, I think within a couple of months, Truman signed the National Security Act later that year, 1947, which established the CIA and the Air Force, who, as I just showed you, they're kind of very integral to this program. And then shortly thereafter, the CIA Act helped secret projects avoid oversight. So when you kind of like look at the timeline of events, it kind of starts to make sense what the lore has said all these years, and now what these witnesses are saying. They're like, no, like this is how it happened and why. And number 4, most important takeaway: understanding how this technology works, how it impacts our future, and understanding the intent of our visitors. So how does this technology work? What do those observables that I just spoke about, what do they represent? What would cause those things to happen? In the documentary, we are blessed with Hal Puthoff, who is a quantum physicist and has worked with the government for many years, and he was the lead scientist in ATIP, the program that Lou Elizondo was part of, that was trying to understand the phenomena and what it is, what it represents. You should know that many people who have been asked if there was one person regarding the UFO topic that they could get in a room alone with full disclosure, no non-disclosure agreements for classified nature, all of that. Some of the UFO documentary folks have said Hal Puthoff for sure. Hal Puthoff was part of our CIA's Stargate program. which was a remote viewing program. He's somebody that's probably going to be a leading voice in this coming up, because I think he's one that understands the connection between the non-local nature of our consciousness and how technology like this might work. It's obvious that whatever UFOs or UAP are, they're doing something different, and we don't really know what that is. We know that they can't be drones, as some people suspect they are, because drones would fly apart at the speeds that these things are going at. They would need to be, something needs to be different about it. So, how Puthoff explained this concept called a warp bubble. Sounds very sci-fi, I understand, but this is nothing sci-fi, this is real. So, with a really high amount of energy, you could create a bubble where the property of space-time is different inside the bubble than outside the bubble. And the bubble itself keeps the density and gravitational forces of the inside of the bubble separate. So this might explain why these things can turn on a dime and, the occupants inside don't turn to mush, or it doesn't crash or fall apart or tear up. And how would it move, you might ask? Well, it moves without wings or obvious signs of propulsion. If you could alter the properties of the bubble to kind of tilt the bubble and the craft down or back, and to move basically in any direction to move it around. He gave the analogy that you would be riding space-time like a surfer rides a wave. And even time works differently for those inside the craft versus outside, and space. So many whistleblowers who have come forward have spoken about incidents where someone from the government, in one of these programs, walked onto a craft that was crashed. And, it looked like a little 20-foot wide thing, maybe. But when they walked inside, it was like as big as a football stadium, ginormous. Again, you're looking at an object through a barrier of space-time, if that makes sense. Someone gave the analogy that if you take a camera and view a fish underwater, you can see the fish really well with a camera underwater because you're in its environment. But if you, for example, stand up out of the water and try to take that camera and point it down at the fish through the water, you can't really see the fish. Like, you can see the outline of it, but it's all distorted and weird, and it's hard to tell how big it is or the depth of it or anything like that. Same concept. And like I said, time working differently inside this bubble. So there have been incidents with people in this program, or whatever partner program you want to say, whatever, that have walked into a craft and, they feel like in the craft, they've only been there for like, let's say 5 minutes, and they come out, a whole hour has passed. Time and space working differently inside a different gravitational field. So you're totally disconnected from the atmosphere. Again, kind of going back to the G-forces thing, not really relevant in this scenario. And then the low observability. So not making a splash, or not making a sonic boom from going fast. This is why that bubble displaces, like, let's say in the water, displaces water molecules so that there's no friction. Basically, there is a barrier between the craft itself and the water or the air, so that those molecules are getting displaced in a way that that doesn't create friction and doesn't therefore create a boom or a splash. And going to the physiological effects of coming into contact with the craft, the burns, the radiation type stuff. Well, creating energy that would be required to create a warp bubble like this, which is a lot, by the way. It's 1,100 billion watts, which is that's 100 times the U.S. daily production of electricity. So a massive amount of energy. What could create that, you might ask? Well, there's a couple of different theories. There's something called zero-point energy, which we've only theorized to date, but we do think it's possible. to create a quantum vacuum, to basically draw on particles and atoms from the air all around us to produce that quantum field of energy. Or using quantum entanglement to draw energy from a foreign distant source. So all particles in the universe, okay? There's some over here, there's some over here. They could all, in theory, be connected, no matter how far away they may be in the universe, through quantum entanglement. Let's say beings from another planet, they want to do this. They want to use quantum entanglement. So they would create a giant power generator, and basically using these principles would almost act like Wi-Fi, but for energy, from really far away. I have heard more than one witness discuss that. I think it may have been the Roswell crash or one of the old crashes from the 40s that, stuff was scattered everywhere. Basically, bits and pieces of this thing were scattered across the desert. Apparently, they had a chunk of it for a long time. And this is a less official witness, so like take this with a grain of salt, sand, whatever. Apparently, they had a piece that it looked like almost like a clear plastic, like the size of an iPad. Maybe it was like pretty small. It was just kind of like flat. It was like a flat piece of like what looked like plastic or plexiglass or something like that. And it was like stored and I guess eventually that they found out that they were looking for the energy device, like what creates the energy in this thing. And I guess eventually they found this one piece of thing that was like creating the energy for one of these things. So I've heard other witnesses. Bob Lazar, he's kind of the reason that we know about Area 51 today. He was like a rogue whistleblower in the 80s, and but things that he's been saying for years and has never changed his story about, are very much coming true today. He was talking about that they were using a specific element that is probably not available on planet Earth. It's probably available somewhere else, and they had to like make them into these specific like little shapes to make the propulsion system work. But it basically agitated these little bits of like this metal element, and it powered their craft. My guess is that we're probably going to find out that whichever method is being used, like this is generally the method that they consider for interstellar space travel, that our government is looking at as far as interstellar space travel. And let's talk about what that energy would represent to us. So, if we could find something that could make this energy, that could make us make a craft just like this, shit, there ain't anything we can't do, man. To be honest, we're talking about like, don't have to worry about your electric bill anymore, ever. Don't have to worry about how you're going to power your car. Don't have to even have wheels on a car because you could technically float everywhere or take some public transit thing that zips you across, the state or the nation in just a few moments, literally. This is literally everything. The disparity of quality of life would like no longer be a thing, because we could literally make anything with this type of power, with this type of technology. No more oil, no more gas, no more coal. Energy, we could 3D print as many houses. No one should ever be homeless at this point. We're talking like basically achieving teleportation, time travel, like stuff that sounds super sci-fi. It's really not. It's just science that is new to us. Even though it's not really that new to us, because there were scientists back in like the 40s and the 50s, like really, really long time ago. They were doing experiments about this stuff specifically, and they were able to produce results in like lab settings. So, I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds wacky. I know that, you know, every TV show or movie or whatever you've ever seen growing up has kind of taught you to either fear this or not take it seriously. And like, I don't know what to tell you, times are changing. It's just, this is where we're at. This is what's happening right now. This technology has the ability to give us endless potential, or we can destroy ourselves with it. we're human beings who are making this choice as a society, as a species. We need to make this decision because this technology it's here already. We're experimenting with it. Our adversaries are experimenting with it, and if you think that we're not doing it, I'm sorry. That's just and you would know. No, I'm sorry, you wouldn't. Our stealth bomber was experimented on for like 30 or 40 years before they ever made it public. And I'm pretty sure they only made it public because somebody caught a photograph of it in the 80s and they were kind of forced to. It's entirely possible that they've been experimenting on this for like 80 plus years. Yes, I'm sorry, it is. And because of the level of secrecy and like I said, the structure that I showed you of how secrecy works here, this is where we're at. So why keep it secret? Why keep humanity in the dark, if you will? One, I think that the US government doesn't want to be in a position to say these things could technically do anything to us and we may or may not be able to really defend ourselves. Two, there's a hesitancy to talk about it at all because we don't want our adversaries to know exactly how far along we are with this. We don't want people to panic because we don't know the intent of our visitors. Let's draw some speculation about our visitors, though. There have been several incidents at nuclear bases where UAP incursions happened, and I think at least twice on our soil, a UAP has managed to hover a bunker for a warhead that opens and shoots if we are going to war, hovered over it, and managed to shut down like all of the nuclear missiles at that site. Like took down our nuclear defense system, doom, 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 like one by one. And some of the witnesses at those events, they, in addition to being like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" Many of them felt like there was a clear message that like we shouldn't be doing this. That the message was stop using these weapons. There was a witness in this documentary who, by the way, has been an unofficial whistleblower for a long, long time, like over 30 or 40 years now. He was a videographer for, I believe, the Air Force. They were doing a missile test with a fake, with a dummy nuclear warhead on it, and his job was to film it. He was filming it, and something happened in the launch where the head of it just poof, fell off. They were reviewing the footage in slow motion, and it showed a craft. Mind you, this missile is traveling at like thousands of miles an hour, okay, shooting up. Craft comes in, hits the head of it with a laser here, goes up at the top, hits it with a laser, basically hits it at all 4 points with like a laser or some kind of energy, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. And that's when the tip fell off. And then it zoop out of the frame. All in, tiny fractions of a second this happened. This was very, very fast. So, what's the message there? Please don't shoot nukes into space or into the airspace. I think it was Hal Puthoff in the documentary said that our fighter pilots have actually shot missiles at these things. And to date, there is apparently not a known incident of one of them shooting back or retaliating in any real negative way. In fact, most people report that it seems to be what they might characterize as playful. And certainly that could be an intelligence gathering effort on their part, I'll accept that. What does it say about our visitors? That they're very concerned, apparently, about nuclear weapons. That they've been showing up, by the way, in droves since we started experimenting with nuclear weapons. And there hasn't really been any hostility, even though their technology and probably their numbers very much outnumber us, and very much outdo us in the tech and innovation department. We're talking about technology that represents a society, but it's not just one society, it's probably a lot more. There are many trillions of galaxies, not just planets, galaxies out there in the universe. I am also open to, and what I think we're going to find out is what our government probably found out not too far into this, is that it's not as simple as spacemen from another planet. We're talking parallel dimensions and other dimensions, just different time and space places. It may not just be one simple explanation for where our friends are coming from. Time travel, even. And also, it's even being discussed with like people in government that some of these craft may be from some break-off civilization that may be living amongst us. And as in, there's a lot of talk about there may be ocean bases. Our ocean is like 90% unexplored, and very much uninhabited in certain areas, aside from like the aquatic life. If you were a being from another planet or another place and you needed a place to hide where the humans aren't going to find you, the ocean would probably be the first place. And there are tons and tons and tons of military, naval, Air Force sightings, encounters over water space, and specifically that craft coming in and out of the water. There's hotspots everywhere of this type of activity. There could also be like a breakaway society that broke away, maybe, after floods and the Younger Dryas event, they just ended up somewhere else or broke off and figured out technology that the rest of us hadn't figured out. I don't know. I think there's probably more than one explanation though for that. So are we in a complicated place with this? Is our government in a complicated place with this? Yeah, I think they are. How do you tell the people that you've been convincing that there's nothing to this for years that actually that's not true, and there actually very much is something to this? It's very real. How do you begin to peel that back? I don't know. I don't know the answer. This technology represents a society or beings or intelligence rather that probably was smart enough to figure out that nuclear technology exists. Probably visited that idea and said, you know what, there's a waste problem, there's a volatility problem. This isn't going to be it. This isn't going to get us to the stars, to the moon, to wherever we want to go. This isn't really going to meet our objectives. And they moved on to something better, something cleaner, and something that just blows nuclear technology out of the water. We might also find out that our behavior is concerning, man. Look at us. If you watch a video of chimpanzee hierarchies, are we really that much evolved other than our looks? We go to war over just about anything. We can't seem to do anything without stealing it or killing someone to get it. If you were an advanced society from elsewhere, you had figured out that humans have now figured out the atom bomb. They have figured out how to split an atom. How far along are they in figuring out how to really get to space, not just blast themselves with combustibles to the moon? If you were a higher intelligence that was probably cruising around the galaxies looking for species that were growing and learning, wouldn't you be concerned that, in our case, humans who are quite hostile and not particularly bright, let's be honest, were experimenting with your technology? Wouldn't you be a little concerned at how far along they were with it, and when is it time to teach them the real? Are we going to find out that these beings are mostly kind and want to teach us things? Yeah, I think there are pretty good signs in that direction. Do I think that there's also a deep, deep darkness to this, that our government is a little awkward and doesn't understand? And when I say our government, I'm talking about like a group of probably hundreds of people or less, not very many. Most of the people who would be telling us or should be telling us about this, they don't even know it exists, or they don't believe that it exists because someone should have told them a long time ago. So do I think we're mature enough to know that life elsewhere exists? Yeah, I think we need to be. Because I don't think we have forever to live in La La Land the way we have been. And it's not our fault that we've lived in La La Land, but here we are, confronted with real people who have literally nothing to gain from this, who, by all intents and purposes, are considered to be committing career suicide. Respectable, highly decorated career suicide. By coming forward with this. But we still have a lot of work to do. We're still so much at war with each other that we aren't able to look up and see that this is something that is going on, and this is like the key to our future. We've got this thing happening right now where AI is about to seriously lay off a lot of people, and we've got to rethink our whole societal structure. This might be the moment where this technology comes in and becomes the thing that we focus on, that we turn our attention to cleaning up shop at home, figuring out what exactly Earth needs and what we need, and trying to figure out how to make those two ideas come together. And I think this technology is probably the way to do it. We'd be creating new sectors of jobs like crazy. We would be living lives that were probably a lot more fulfilling than what we're doing now. And while it's a little overwhelming to consider the immenseness of the universe and what a bunch of life elsewhere might represent for us, I know that we can handle it. And this would challenge our historical record, our religious views, our government, financial, industrial tendencies, and on and on. Just every sector would be affected. George Bush Jr.'s administration had asked for help put off, I think, about 12 other people to do some research and come up with a pros cons list, basically, of going forward with public disclosure. What would be the effects of going forward with disclosure back in the early 2000s? All of those people basically decided that the pros outweighed the cons, and they decided to scrap the whole idea at the time. And I don't know what was prompting him to push forward on that. I don't know if there was something imminent that they thought that humanity might find out kind of all at once. But I think as time goes on, as people's cameras and telescopes get better and better, as people become more open and accepting and wondrous about the universe and all the images we get from the James Webb Telescope and other areas. What are we missing out on? There's just like this whole space out there, and we're here. What if going to those places was not as hard as we thought? And what if learning about other beings and other cultures was not the terrifying, scary monster time that we think it might be? Do I think that there is probably a deep, deep darkness to this that keeps some of the military folks up at night that work on this? Yeah, sure. I think that if you're applying the same statistical reference to humans as you are to other beings, that 95% of people are generally good, and like 5% are pretty damn awful, I think you'll understand that whether or not there are some beings that definitely don't have our best interests in mind, whether those exist, is that what should stop us from exploring this? Should we just pretend like it doesn't exist? No, I don't think that's the answer. This represents a giant opportunity for us. We need to decide if we're going to open ourselves up for a better future, or keep doing things the way we have been. Keep fighting senseless wars. Keep working jobs we hate. Keep paying for electricity when we could get it a million other ways. And just in general, not evolving as a species. We're in a new age now, and doing things the way we have been is not going to carry us forward. It's not going to advance our society. It's not going to make our quality of life better. In fact, it's going to make it way, way worse if we keep digging our heels in and choosing to do life and government and finance and tech the way we have been. Aren't you guys bored? I'm ready for something new. I'm down for a future where there's endless amounts of things to learn about the universe, about other cultures, other beings. If we show a little maturity and we actually ask for it, if we really push for it, we might just get that. Or we can just depend on others to do it for us and keep doing things the way we have been. And I guess you'll know what your future will look like. But I personally choose one of adventure. Disclosure isn't really just about aliens. It's about whether humanity is ready to evolve beyond war, secrecy, and scarcity. History will remember this moment as a big turning point, whether we chose to reach for the stars or continued fighting in the dark. The universe is bigger, stranger, and more connected than we ever could have imagined. It's time for us to start asking better questions. Energy, travel, medicine, physics, peace, everything changes the moment that we all face the truth. And that moment is coming, whether the gatekeepers like it or not.